at least 9 of you can see at a time. Hi, Rachel. Hi, Joe. So I'm sorry I uploaded the video a little bit late last night. I'm not sure people got the opportunity to watch it already. Yeah, so I'm gonna do that earlier next week. There's just stuff happening. And I'm still trying to figure out when to do what to make it the most beneficial for everyone with the different groups and people in different time zones. It's a little bit complicated, but yeah, the next review video will come earlier. Rachel, do you have a question?
Yes, Inka, I couldn't get the video to play. I don't know if that was just a problem I had, but no one else had. But when I clicked on it, it said this content is not available. So if anyone else has that problem, maybe it's an issue with the link.
Yes, could someone check? Someone try. Okay, because I gave you all permission to watch it in stream. The link should get you there, but I can also download it and upload it as a separate file. Then you can definitely download it, just as a backup. It's very strange with stream sometimes. Did anyone else have trouble? I mean, you probably didn't try yet.
But where is the link for the video?
In the review channel, just below the scheduled meetings.
I just tried it. I think you can stream it on the channel.
Can I ask, when you click on the link, are you clicking on the little like italicized words that say play video here, or is there another way to access it?
You can. You click on the link itself. So in the conversation that I started there, really week 2, there's a embedded link, right? This
Yeah. So I tried the embedded link, but it wasn't working for me anyway.
And you have a different link on top of that?
I don't. Is that the only one, or is there?
That's the only one that I have.
Okay.
And then I uploaded the outline and the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, I was able to access both of those, but I'll try it again after class, and if I still have problems, I'll message you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's great, good. Thank you. But I can also, those videos I can also just upload as videos that you can download. It's just a few more steps of downloading and uploading, but then we can make sure you have access to those. But like all the links should work because you also need to watch your recordings sometimes, right, of the Kempo class. So I hope stream works for everyone. If not, let me know straight away if something doesn't work. We already figured out a couple of bugs here and there. But yeah, if you let me know straight away, then I can fix the links if there's a problem. Yes, is there any other technical issue or any other question so far? Where to find what? Has anything turned out to be more problematic than you thought? So just technically or in terms of organization. No, okay. So you have seen, I really enjoy your answers for the attendance quizzes and getting all your questions. Actually, it's yeah, it makes me feel like I have at least some contact with everyone when I read your answers, and sometimes there are some comments included. I do return them only by, like, I return them straight away. So every evening I check all of them that were returned, and that's when I forward the questions to Lamala. And now I will answer the clarification questions straight away in the chat. I hope I can keep it up because like every evening having a bunch of questions to answer might be a little bit tough, but I will try to do that every evening, and otherwise maybe the next morning, so that when you have questions with regard to what we covered, you have an answer straight away. You can fill in your blanks in your notes straight away, and you don't have to wait until the review class. And if it's still not clear, then come back to me in the chat and we can discuss it. And then some topics we can just keep for the review class because they're not relevant for the quizzes or for the progress in the class. Like if you don't understand something and it comes up again and again and again in the explanations, then yeah, that would be also sad if you miss a week worth of thought because you didn't understand that term correctly or something like that. Yeah. So that's why I'm going to answer those questions straight away in writing now. Yes. I'm going to see whether there are some questions from the past week that have not yet been answered in class or in our discussions or in other questions. But if there was something that I'm not gonna revise now and that's still unclear, then just post those questions again, just like Stefan was asking twice about the philosophical source for the gateway to knowledge. It's exactly like sometimes if something, if you don't feel like your question was answered, then just ask it again. But the Llama actually, like, I do it a little bit, and then Llama does it also. We're combining different questions. So if there are like 4 questions about imperceptible form, he's not gonna answer each single one, but he's gonna give a general explanation that should cover all of those questions, right? So you might not hear your particular question. But yeah, so we try to answer everything. Good. So I did make that video, so you have a review lecture. So still, is there any question that you have right now with regard to the content that you have not, that we have not been able to answer yet?
I have a question from today. Is that okay?
Let's see whether there are questions from before, but otherwise, yes. Are there any questions from last week first? Rachel. You're muted. Cannot hear you.
Sorry. I wanted to ask a clarification question on the way that the resources will work, if that's okay, before we move on to this week's material.
Yes.
I know you said that you're not sure when you're going to upload things, but are you thinking that, so the PowerPoint I see was very detailed, and also the list for the week's topic was very detailed. Is that going to be available before the quiz, or is that like for after the quiz?
The review topics are always before the quiz. I do want to ensure your engagement in the class with the quizzes. So the PowerPoints I'm going to post afterwards.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons for the quizzes, because I cannot see whether you're actually participating or whether you just turn on the video and leave, and then you just wait for the answers to appear to you in the PDF in a review tab handout. So yeah, the PowerPoints I'm going to post on Tuesdays after the quiz is closed.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Apart from that, like the deadline should, like the posting should always work in that way. So every morning you get your attendance quiz. Like I'm always speaking Nepal time. I'm sorry. So every morning you get your attendance quizzes. They are open until Sunday, the following Sunday. Then on Monday morning, I post the quiz, which is then open for 24 hours. On Sunday, I post a reading for the coming week. On Fridays, I post assignments if there are any. So this Friday, you will get your first paper assignment. And midterm should also be a Friday. So yeah. And every night I'm going to answer the attendance quizzes and clarifications. And some point after class, I post the review topics. And I would like to make a big shout out for my helper in this. Thank you, Miri, for helping with these lists. So because my translation notes are not really intelligible enough, and it would take me a while to go over everything again, Miri actually takes note of the topics that we cover, and then I go over it and make sure everything is correct, and then I send it to you. But Miri is a great help in that, so thank you. I'm not going to take your credit this year. So, okay, so is there any question about the content from last week? And just ask it if it's something I covered in the presentation, then I can just go into the PowerPoint and say it anyways. And then you see it again in the presentation.
Hi, would you please have to tell me again the 3 reasons to prove something as imperceptible form? I believe that Lama told about that, but I didn't got.
Yes. So the numbering in the book is different than what he said in class. Like on page 19 and 20, it says imperceptible form as an action of body and speech is not as a form because it's not consciousness. And then the second that he mentioned is that it's arisen from the elements. So it's caused by the the 4 elements, and it is present until the causes for abandoning those vows, or the causes that would destroy those vows, would be present. So for the entire life. Oh my. One second, I got just 6 messages at once. Okay, those are just general questions. Okay, sorry for that. I thought there was something wrong with the audio or something. When I get a lot of messages at once, sometimes people want to tell me that there's something really wrong with with the audio or something. Okay, so the list that he gave was they're not mind. They are caused by the elements, and they are present until contrary causes would come into being. So they are actually the vows are present, or imperceptible forms are present until they are destroyed by something contrary. And the way that this last one is understood is that if something can be pierced, or something can be harmed by another object, then it's also form. This definition of form is defined as form. Form is something that can be pierced, that can be harmed in some way, right? So if you understand the suk not as noun but as verb, it would be like a thorn piercing an object, or a nail piercing an object. So it's something that can be harmed by something else. It has to do with what we translated as being, we can contact it, we can experience it through coming into contact with it. So the vows, or this imperceptible form, can also be harmed by these contrary conditions. Can like if there's death, for example, or something that Lamala didn't mention, a change of sex. If there are these outer circumstances, like physical circumstances that change, the body falls away, then that also harms the vows. They will also be destroyed at that time, this imperceptible form. So in that way, they're present until these contrary harmful circumstances are present, and therefore it's also something that can be harmed, and therefore it's also a form in that sense. So these are the 3 reasons that he mentioned, and here the order is a little bit different, right? Because here the 3rd one is then imperceptible form is a certain kind of physical or verbal action. Its identity is determined as being either virtuous or non-virtuous, and he explained this to actually be a subsection of the first point. So, yeah, does that make sense?
Thank you.
I'll also write it down below this clarification. Okay, Miriam?
Yeah, I'm still a little bit confused about the sound categories. So I get that the first 2 are just based on the cause, like if it's from a sentient being or if it's not created by a sentient being, or both. But then we have this animate sounds that express meaning and inanimate sounds that don't express meaning. So I'm not sure if these exactly cover the same, or if there are cases that are like from a conscious elemental cause, but they are not an animate sound that expresses meaning because maybe they don't express meaning. Like, I don't know, snoring or something.
Snoring indicates the meaning that someone has a sinus problem. Well, there are different explanations about this. So one way, like some people say that the translation as we have it is actually incorrect. That it is two different categorizations. So the primary categories would be the causes. That would be the first level. And then, so it would be originating from conscious elemental causes, so sentient beings, from unconscious elements, or from both together, right? That would be the first level of categorization. And then some people say that the sentient, the second category is just looking at whether meaning is conveyed or not to sentient beings, or that they originate from animate and inanimate. So there's the difference in explanation. So you could say these originate, like everything that originates from sentient beings. Any sound can either communicate a meaning to sentient beings or not. And then meaning is always communicated by animated beings, and the meanings that are communicated can be either those that a noble being would conceive of or an ordinary person conceives of. But the alternative way of looking at the second set is that it has to be distinguished, just as you said, as animate and inanimate. So caused from animate sources or caused from inanimate, and having meaning or no meaning. And that's the way that Lamala went, right? And that's the way that our translation phrases it. That it's just a completely other way of breaking it down. And then, like, if we have these two categories, then really it has to be like only like all sounds that beings make have some sort of meaning. And then inanimately caused sounds have no specific meaning. But generally the understanding often is that it refers to the meaning that is whether meaning is conveyed to beings or not. So
Great,
it is a little bit of a difficult topic that not everyone has the same opinion about. Yeah. Was there another question? Wow, questionless people. Good at answering all questions. Okay, so how do you relate to all of this? The first week was, oh no, but first, Bill, you had another question about today. Maybe I can answer this quickly.
Let's see if I can remember. The sense consciousnesses. So my understanding was they were just like pure awareness, like without judgment. And today we said that the sense consciousness could have the impression of pleasant, painful, and neutral. So is that different in different texts, or?
Well, it's the cognition. It's the cognition and it follows then, it's a process, right? So we will go into detail about it with the elements. Because then we talk about the object, sensors, and the cognitions. But the process, how it's usually described, this cognitive process, is that you have object, faculty, and a previous moment of cognition. If these three are present, then a new cognition arises. And if the object was, like, for example, form, and if faculty was the I faculty, then the I consciousness arises, which is in itself then neutral, like neutral, and then the conceptualization of it arises later on. If we look back at the way that we broke down mind and cognition as a general topic, though, we said there's mind and mental states, and there are these 5 ever-present mental states, and sensation actually belongs to the ever-present mental states, right? We will come to formations, and we will talk about those mental states. So as ever-present mental states, or always those that always come together with cognition. It doesn't really need proper conceptualization. It goes before. In some systems, there is even an explanation of some objects being experienced as painful or pleasurable by the sense faculties themselves, because it harms by the sense consciousnesses themselves, because it actually physically harms the I faculty. So there's that too. But I think we will talk about it more when we talk about formations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Stefan.
Well, hey, I had a question about the measurement we did today, and the question is that 4 sheep are 1 cow or something? Isn't it like the hair of the sheep?
Yes, that's what I translated it as. So in class, I translated it as hair of the rabbit, hair of the sheep, and the hair of the cow. The text itself only says it's the cow particle. But yeah, it's a measurement in size, right? It's not that we're talking about cows here, the size of cows. Like 7 rabbits are a sheep. But these are measurements in size based on how many indivisible particles together make them up. And I saw that there's a question about the 7. I have to ask where the 7 comes from, whether there's a particular reason. Maybe the Buddha has mentioned something in some sutra about 7 being I don't know, it's just a guess, the measurement. If anyone else knows where the 7 comes from, please let me know. But that's just how it is presented, how it is broken down. Yeah, Rachel?
Hey, I sometimes have a little bit problems with the audio during class, and I was wondering if we could go over the list of 7 textures of resultant forms, because it looks like there's actually a list of 9 in the text, so I wasn't sure about that.
Yes, there are 2 different lists going on, actually. There's the basic list, and then there is a more specific list, or an additional list that comes from the Abhidhamma Samuccaya. So 1 second. I did have that in the PowerPoint. But I don't think I had the details. Did I have the notes for it? No. Okay, so too many papers. Yeah. So in the text, it speaks about the textures or the tangibility, the object of the body faculty. So textures doesn't bring that meaning across, I find, enough, because saying hunger is a texture doesn't really make sense. Saying hunger is something that is experienced by the body makes sense, right? So we have the four causal forms, the textures of the four causal forms, and then we have 7 textures that are resultant ones. So they're not the textures of the resultant forms, but textures that result from the causal forms, from the causal textures, right? So that's why it's 7 and not also 11. It's not the texture of the ear faculty, it's not the texture of the eye faculty, but it's the tangible object or impressions on the body faculty that result from different combinations and arrangements of the causal forms. And so the basic list is that we find in the Abhidhamma Kosha, and that's the 7 textures of resultant forms: smoothness, roughness, heaviness, lightness, hunger, thirst, and cold. So we have 4 outer ones and 3 inner ones. Smoothness, and please jump in if you have something else in your note, because I'm now looking at the list that I made from a commentary and not in class. So smoothness was likened to soft fabrics like silk or brocade. Roughness, goat fur. Heaviness of like metals like iron, gold, silver. And lightness was the experience of touching cotton wool. And the inner experiences were based on the predominance of certain elements inside the body. So hunger was strong wind, thirst was strong heat, and coldness was strong water, wind, or earth, everything but heat. So that's the basic set, which is meant here with the 7 resultant ones. And the second list that is mentioned here, that comes from the Abhidhamma Samuccaya. The supple, yielding, rigid, sated, ill, aged, dying, rested, and bold. And the first 3 are outer ones, and that has to do with like feelings of tightness. It's likened to the different belts or different strengths of belts. So like a normal belt would be like a just rightly tightened belt would be the supple. Yielding would be a cotton belt. Like I imagine it would be a fabric that is more, that doesn't really function as a proper belt. It's more like an ornament, like a fashion item than a real belt, because it's yielding. When you tighten it too much, it just expands, right? And then rigid would be something, a tough material and a belt that you can really tighten up. So like a really, really tight belt. And then the additional inner tangible objects would be sated. So the experience from having had the right amount of food, ill refers to just an unbalanced elements inside the body. Aged, which comes about through moving through the stages of life. Dying, when the life force comes to an end. Rested, when fatigue is cleared away. And boldness, or bold means that one is fearless because one knows the strength of the body, and that's actually also an elemental cause. Like when all the elements are in balance and you ate the right food, like everything is good, then you're bold because you know you can do anything. Because you're strong and healthy. So that second list is from the Samuchaya, an additional way of looking at it. The experience that we have physically, like really, I think the most important in this is to understand that these are not textures like like how does the glass feel, but what kind of things can we physically experience, like with our body faculty? What are the objects of the body faculty, both inner and outer? Because the body faculty, this all-covering thing, like the smooth to the touch bird, is really lining the entire body, right? Between the different tissues, between the skin and the flesh, but also aligning the intestines and everything. So everything that can experience pain is lined with this body faculty. I don't know, maybe there are parts where we don't have any nerves that it would not be counted.
Thank you. That was very good.
You're welcome. Yeah, I started to fill in some of the notes that the commentary makes into our text. So there is a commentary, right? So as we have seen, as I told Stefan today before class, the Gateway to Knowledge is based on the Sarvastivadana or Vaibhashikan Abhidhamma, specifically the Abhidhamma Kosha by Vasubandhu, and the Abhidhamma Samuchaya by Asanga. And so all the topics that we can find here, they're covered in some way in the Kosha or the Samuchaya. So that would be the first place to look if one isn't sure what something means, and you have the PDFs of the translations of these two texts, including the commentary by Vasubandhu, where he takes more the stance of a Sautrantican, criticizing the Vaibhashika view. And these were the two main Abhidhammas that were translated. The Theravada Abhidhamma is not translated to Tibetan in its totality. The original Sarvastivadana texts are not available in Tibetan, so like the canonical texts. It's only the commentaries, like the Kosha or the Samuchaya, that are available. So from the early schools, we have the Theravada Abhidhamma and we have the Sarvastivadana Abhidhamma, which you read about in this week's reading, right? And then for the Yogacarya, we have the Samuchaya. There's only the Kosha and the Samuchaya. Those are the most important Abhidhamma works that were translated into Tibetan and that are used all the time. And then Mibam Rinpoche in the 19th century synthesized the two. So until that point, commentaries were written, or those two texts themselves were used to study Abhidhamma. And then Mibam Rinpoche synthesized them to make a work that we can study easily with the 10 topics and so on. And there are a couple of commentaries. There's mainly one commentary really that makes sense, and that's a Chandra. So it's one of those annotated commentaries where you have the original text, and then the commentator fills in important information in different places. And of course, that's not translated. Some of the information you get in the brackets, in the square brackets, that actually comes directly from that commentary. So the translators of our translation, they used Khenpo Nyden's commentary, but not all the information is present in there. Most of it is tiny clarifications. But yeah, I'm trying to fill in, and maybe eventually I will be able to give you some of the chapters of the commentary. But it is a little bit too much work to promise you that. But yeah, so there is this commentary, but you get all the information through Lamala's explanations, of course, includes that and more. But yeah, it's the first time we have a text that doesn't have a translated commentary. So, has any one of you studied Abhidhamma before? I know Stefan did a little bit in... Yes, I do know that Miriam studied some Abhidhamma before. So, Bill, you also?
A little.
Okay, okay. And Mark also a little, or Mark also studied. So, for those of you who have never had any Abhidhamma experience, how do you relate to the text and what we're hearing so far? Like, do you have anything you want to share about that? Okay, Mark.
Actually, I was raising my hand, not to say that I've studied Abhidharma in the past, though I have done a little bit, but to ask a question. So I'm assuming,
Okay.
and so this is an assumption, which means, is this assumption right? So all, like, especially this stuff that we did today about, about the most subtle forms and the rabbit particles and the sheep particles and all that stuff. I'm assuming this is coming from some 4th or something century BCE kind of common Indian physics and cosmology. Is that so? I guess I'm trying to get at some of the history behind this.
Does anyone have a thought on this?
I would think pretty much this is like Indian cosmology, right? That it's based on for that specific question.
Yeah. To go a little bit more general, what are the origins of the Abhidhamma and how can we understand what the Abhidhamma is?
Well, one way I'm understanding it, I don't know about its origins, but one way I'm understanding it is that it's it's definitely a detailed phenomenology, and it's a phenomenology that has a purpose. It has a purpose of dealing with all the misconceptions regarding the self. So after going through, you know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G1, G2, G3, G4, all that sort of stuff, it'll be impossible to say, oh yeah, gee, I guess the self, maybe it's not really singular. And then you go through all the other things that this phenomenology is meant to correct. And so that's its purpose, as I understand it.
That's particularly the purpose of the 10 topics, right?
Yeah.
And the way that they are structured.
Mm-hmm.
The Abhidhamma itself is a little bit vaster, or the different understandings of what we mean with Abhidhamma. Miriam.
I think one explanation of how the Abhidhamma was written is that they just went through all of the sutras and took out all of the lists and arranged all of the lists into Abhidhamma. So basically to make like a glossary or an overview of all the lists that come up in the sutras.
Yes. So either it was the people after the first council, or it was the Buddha himself who did that, right? I always joke a little bit about the fact that he went actually to teach his mother, and what he taught her in the heaven of the 33 was the Abhidhamma.
Lucky mother.
Yes, what a way to repay her kindness.
I was hoping I wasn't.
Yeah, so, but the historically more plausible explanation is that the sutras were taught in certain circumstances based on individuals for a certain audience in certain situations, and they're embellished with a lot of stories and different ways to bring across a meaning, but stylistically very different. And the Abhidhamma is then a later development to try to systematize, like Miriam said, so systematize everything that was said and to put it all together. So trying to reconciliate everything that the Buddha said into a coherent system, using all these lists to make it easy to memorize them too. Like in the sutras, we have a lot of repetition as a mnemonic aid. And in the Abhidhamma, we find all the lists. So if you have the 5, then you know that the first one of the 5 has again 3. It's a way of memorizing too. And then that allows the exposition by the Abhidhammikas. Dina, you raised your hand, but then you put it down again.
Yes, to say that maybe also the free basket there divided, like Abhidharma is for eliminating the all the obscurations of wisdom, and Sutra for attachment here, or Vinaya is for attachment, and Sutra for
it's the higher trainings. It's not for specific elimination of obscurations. Rather, the presentation of the Pitakas and the trainings goes more in the positive direction. Mm-hmm. Right? So all Buddhist practice can be summarized into the practice of discipline, meditative absorption, and wisdom. And the 3 baskets of Vinaya, Sutra, and Abhidhamma, they relate to these. That's why. So Vinaya teaches about the higher training of discipline. Sutra teaches about the higher training of meditation, and Abhidhamma teaches the higher training of wisdom. Now, yes, and but still, the Abhidhamma also teaches the same topics, and like a grammar guide or like a roadmap for the meditator. So giving all the outline of what's going to happen, what is possible, what you can perceive, and so on. So it's like the roadmap that that allows the meditate. There's a theory background for the meditator's experience also. And so in that sense, it's wisdom, it's the methodology around the Abhidhamma that works together with the sutra explanations and making them more universally applicable. And also, so there's this one part where the Abhidhamma texts, especially the canonical texts, really are concerned with systemizing everything, putting it into these lists, breaking everything down, taking all the Buddha's teachings and the cosmology and everything, because he talks about that too in different sutras, and it's based on the historical context that they're in, of course, and the cosmology of India at the time. And so they put it all together, systematize it, and then this brings up some problems, like how to reconciliate the different levels of explanation and so on. And so the Abhidhamma also addresses some of the problems that arise from systematizing it in this way, like some questions that arise, and they try to resolve this by the way they arrange it, but also in discussion. So it speaks about the different levels of truth and the different levels of teachings, and we will see more of that in the future, of course. But so it also does that. It also gives this, tries to reconciliate everything with each other and explain how to relate to it. For those of you who haven't read it yet, this week's reading will give you a little bit of an overview of that. And it's the methodology, like when we speak about Abhidhamma, we speak about the Abhidhamma Pitaka, which are the teachings of the Buddha or his disciples that are the Abhidhamma teachings. That would be the canonical texts of the Theravada or Sarvastivada Abhidhamma, containing 7 books each, different kinds though, different lists. The Sarvastivada Abhidhamma texts, the 7 great texts, they're not available in any European language, nor are they available in Tibetan. They were translated into Chinese. So we have a little bit of access to them. And then the Theravada Abhidhamma texts, like the chronological texts, they are available in Pali and also translated into English. So that's one way of understanding Abhidhamma. And then there's also the Abhidhamma in the sense of a methodology, which then refers to all the style and this breaking down and the specific type of training and wisdom that one undergoes through the Abhidhamma text. And so we identify everything that's concerned with wisdom as Abhidhamma. Like when you recall how we, like the translator's homage, the translator's homage in translated texts, when we prostrate to the omniscient one, that indicates that the text is concerned with, is falls into the category of Abhidhamma, for example. So yeah, then there's the whole genre of Abhidhamma that employs this Abhidhammic methodology that we just spoke about. Yeah. How do you then, like, just very practically, how do you study the material these days? How are you doing with that? Like, how are you approaching the text? Anyone who hasn't said anything yet? Okay, if there are no other volunteers, then Miriam.
I think what I do so far is basically convert it from like full sentences into lists, and then so I have lists with definitions instead of the whole text, so it's easier to study.
And then what do you? Oh, Rachel.
I was just curious if other students had gone through the Quizlet yet. I noticed just on the chapter 1, there's 650 some words, and I was just curious if other people were actually attempting to review all these terms, or how that resource is being utilized by others.
Yes, Mark.
Well, I haven't coped with all 650 or so, but it is really, I mean, you know, it's a help to my Tibetan to go through that Quizlet. It's a really great resource that you made for us, Inka. So, you know, thanks so much for that. If I do maybe 10 a day, you know, that's not bad. And I kind of gear it to where we are in the text. So I'm not just looking at the English, but I'm learning the Tibetan as well. I mean, you know, why not?
Yeah. If it's overwhelming to look at the vocab for the entire chapter, which you can like mix up. Some of them are repetitive and some of them are really words that you probably already know. There is also the PDF that I uploaded where these lists come from, and they're structured according to the text. So it says like paragraph 1.21 and then all the words that turn up there. And that's another way of learning these lists, is like following the Tibetan text, but having the list on the side and not needing to type everything into your dictionary, but use it in order to read the Tibetan itself. And then maybe you become familiar enough with the vocabulary that you can go through all 600 of them. But it's really as much as you can as you study. If you study Tibetan and you want to improve your vocab, then these lists will be available for you forever. So if you ever study Abhidhamma again or have to talk about the aggregates, like this is all the vocab that's relevant for the aggregates, right? Chapter 1 vocab. Did anyone already? Oh yeah, Mark.
Inka, so there's many a time when you'll say, so here we are on page 19. So I have a copy of the PDF that, you know, or whatever it is, makes no difference. And I downloaded the PDF, and unless it's hidden way up in a corner and my software hides that corner because because you know it wants to ruin my day or something like that. I don't see page numbers, but what does help is when you say, you know, 117 or 1, you know, when you give the paragraph numbers, that's a help. But page numbers, I don't see them at all.
Okay. Yeah, I have the hard copies. One of the reasons why I didn't go to Germany was I wanted to keep my books.
Yeah.
The hard copy does have page numbers, but yeah, I'm still waiting for the new scan, or I might just, like, if we don't have it, I might just scan the next chapter for you with the Tibetan and the English together. So we have the same version, and for those who want to follow the Tibetan at the side, sorry, Bill, I still didn't manage to give you the page numbers at the beginning of class. I always forgot until like a minute before, and then I did look it up in the PDF. Yeah, so that you have the Tibetan and the English side by side, and we have the same page numbers. I think that will make things easier. Yeah, and I'm gonna keep mentioning the paragraphs. That should also help for the English. Yeah, still trying to gather the resources to make it the easiest for everyone. Yeah, so I'm gonna ask again. There's a rumor that we will get a Tibetan English version, a scan with both of them. Otherwise, I'm gonna make them chapter by chapter for you on my hard copy. Okay, our time is already over. So I hope by next time next week, I will have the pre-recording ready before in the review class, and then you can use, if there's still questions, you can ask them. And then we move on to some more discussion topics. We'll also have covered a little bit of more material that gives us a little bit of things to talk about. And please do read the readings. They give a lot of background information that we can then talk about too. Okay. Then I wish you a wonderful rest of the day, night, evening, morning, wherever you are, whatever time it is. Okay, so I see you all tomorrow.
Sushita.